One of the challenges is standardizing what is called medicine. And the charge has been thrown out that advocates for legalization have used medical marijuana as a beachhead in states, soften up the voter population, get them to get okay with the idea, with the goal of moving towards full recreational marijuana. I think that you guys are all working in very legitimate spaces, but yet a lot of the language is advocacy because you're fighting for your space. And I would just like to get your thoughts on what that allegation of the use of medical marijuana in states is, and how can you guys in your inner circles better define what is medicine so that so we can move towards a more a space of validation.
In our experience, operating in so many different markets, and I'll just pick on New York for a second. I think New York has done an extraordinary job of developing the framework. We have independent validation that we have to go through before we ever send it to the Wadsworth Laboratory, which is the state-run laboratory where they test every controlled substance. And we test for, we test the chemistry, we test for heavy metals, we test for impurities, we test stability. Every single thing that would be required for a pharmaceutical-grade product is done independently in New York State. And every operator in New York State has to abide by those things. And I think that it does take an enormous amount of investment. And frankly, it's made us better at what we do because we've been forced to make that investment and think about it in those terms. But I would say that the industry itself, and I'm going to, again, this is meant to be provocative, there's so much low-hanging fruit depending upon how the economic pie can be divvied up based on the format of the regulations. So if you have a very highly regulated medical framework, you must produce products of a certain caliber. If you don't, then you're left in a situation where it's effectively a self-regulated body. And many of the participants we're familiar with have an enormous amount of compassion and care and commitment to that level of professionalism, but there are always a few folks that are looking to make a quick buck, and that's where you run into trouble. So I would say that ultimately it has to fall back to the way the states want and the communities that the states effectively represent want these programs to be delivered and provided for.
I would say that there definitely are at least two, but very multiple number of approaches that different states have taken, and a number of states have passed or have approached the regulatory structure as hands-off as they possibly can. This is something stinky that they don't want to touch or have their names associated with, and so they're just as happy to let a citizens initiative for medical cannabis pass and provide as little support and regulatory structure as possible because they don't want to deal with it. On the East Coast, we've definitely seen an opposite, where it's been a much more of a pharmaceutical approach to regulation, where they've definitely very much limited the number of people that can be involved in production and processing and distribution. It costs much more money, and it's definitely a much more of a pharma gold model than it has been on the West Side, for sure. And I can't say which one is better or worse. I think that it's definitely, on the East Coast, there's been definitely a restriction in access. Perhaps the quality of the products is better, and that may be true, but I think that in the end, access has been severely restricted. Whereas on the west side of the country, it's been mostly the opposite, where it's been very accessible, but the quality has been quite variable in what's possible.
I'll say, I have a couple notes here. I was going to say, my concern, I support these state efforts to create a regulated market for medical cannabis, but my disappointment is that very few of these states are actually allocating any of the revenue